I'm here with my new friend, Mark Barton, and we're here to talk about a very interesting topic. And it's a topic that's been bantered around a lot over the years, and I think it's come to a place today where things have maybe, it's tipped a little bit. The scale is tipped a little bit. And I read a paper by Mark called Why Modern Digital Synthesis is More Analog Than Analog. So repeat that. Digital synthesis is more analog than analog. And he wrote a very compelling paper. We'll put this out for everybody to see. But I'm here with Mark Barton, and I'd like to talk about this today.
All right.
I mean, I read your paper, and it made a lot of sense to me. And I'd like you to explain it, because you could explain it exactly how you meant it to be explained. Mm-hmm. But my basic takeaway is that digital has gotten to a point where the resolution is so much higher that there's a lot more continuum of accuracy in the sound recreation. Whereas in early digital, we were 8-bit and, it was like more stepped. Mm-hmm. That's like the dumbed down version of it. So what do you see that makes it so much more smooth than analog now?
Well, it's the paper takes it from a signal to noise ratio perspective, where analog on its best day is about 100 dB of signal to noise. And so as, let's say, a voltage is transitioning, let's say from 0 volts to 2 volts, it gets there in a continuous way, but it gets there like this because of the noise. And digital in 64-bit floating point, which is 53 bits of accuracy, which is unbelievable. I forget the exact numbers, but it's hundreds of dB better than analog. It gets there much smoother. So in the context of an analog, what is an analog? That means something that's similar. So we're trying to make something that's similar to sound and imitate the way the pressure wave in the air is moving. The digital at 64 bits just does it in a smoother way than analog. It's a better analog than analog electronics.
So analog electronics can't create the smoothness and the precision, accuracy, correct? And the frequency range, all of it.
Well, it can do the frequency range, and it is still continuous, but it's noisy. And the other thing people say that digital is not as good is because it's stepped, right? No matter how fine the steps, it's still steps, and the other is continuous. What they don't realize is that once the digital makes its way out of the digital analog converter, and they always leave out the reconstruction filter, which connects the dots in a continuous way. So you do get a completely mathematically perfect reconstruction of the desired waveform.
Okay, so one of the things that really stuck with me as well, besides the signal to noise and the accuracy, the smoothness of the original analog, was that you said a lot of times people's argument is that there's a user experience, but that's different in digital versus analog, and that the listener in the end doesn't care, right?
Right, exactly. The listener doesn't care if you turned a real knob. That's my point.
They don't care what any of the knobs are.
Right. If it was a real knob or if you moved a mouse, you can't hear that.
So I think I would tend to agree with you, but I find that digital, as much as it's maybe surpassed analog in terms of its signal-to-noise ratio, which I think it's clear that it has, in terms of its expressive ability, the actual instruments haven't been developed with the same care as, let's say, a Stradivarius violin or a fine piano or something, because the end user of, listener of music doesn't care what piano it was played on. But there's a reason why a pianist is going to pick a certain piano to play.
Sure.
Because what's in them and the level of expressiveness and how they feel and what they can convey to the listener is easier on a really well-made instrument. They don't have to work, fighting a piano. You hear instrumentalists, musicians say that, I'm like fighting the instrument to get it out.
Right.
And I think maybe the next, and this is for discussion with you, right, is that digital needs to develop the interface with the musicians to the next level. They've got like all the numbers and the hardware and everything in a much better place than it ever was. But still, it's not just that we just like feeling turning knobs, it's not just a user experience. It's the music in us that gets to the listener through whatever that instrument is.
Okay, so let's say you're working with a Mini Moog clone on a screen. It looks just like a Mini Moog. It's got the same knobs. Is that not the same? And it makes the exact same sounds. Is that not the same experience anymore?
Is it for you?
It's a better experience for me. I'm super opinionated on this, but I find using, I've sold all my analog gear. I've got nothing. I mean, that's the last thing that went. And the
last thing, let's just 2 minutes or even like
That's
2
right.
seconds on this.
Right.
This Moog 3C it was Mark's. I got it from Mark. And we put out a video on that, but this is his baby. I feel like I adopted something and then like the real parent has come in.
Well, I'm hardly the real parent, but I had it for a long time.
Yeah. And it came from another party in between Mort Garson
Right.
and Mark getting it. So it's it's in some people's view a crown jewel of analog modular synthesis, and it's got a lot of great history, and we'll get into that in other videos, but that's what he's talking about.
Okay. So I got rid of it because I found that the experience using software synthesizers, especially like a platform like Voltage Modular, which we'll discuss as well, to be almost a psychedelic experience, because you can, whatever you think can happen right now. You're not limited to this panel, this complement of modules I have in my rack. Oh, I need another filter. If only I had 2 more VCAs. That never happens. It's like, boom, oh, gee, I need another fixed filter bank. Okay, I need another one. I need another one. I need another one. I mean, it just like that. So like creation by just thinking about it, you can have whatever you want. I don't like this filter, out it goes. Here's another one. So that part I really enjoy. The creative process
in digital
just flows. Yeah, only in digital. You can't do that. And I mean, if you had a Eurorack system, if you had a spare filter, it's let me take this one out, and put the other one in. And by the time that happens, whatever you were thinking about is long gone. So that part I really enjoy. The spontaneity and the flow. I mean, the flow state you get into.
So do you have controllers for each of the knobs?
No, I use the mouse. I'm just used to.
You're fine with one at a time, basically, moving knobs one at a time.
Yeah, well, my keyboard's got 8 knobs that, you just right-click on a knob and assign, and boom, you can turn it with that knob if I want to. I hardly ever do that, actually.
Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us, and it really helps us. And also, if you see the link in the description below, you'll be able to get access to this paper that Mark wrote. So how did you ultimately make the decision to get rid of the best sounding analog synthesizers that were ever made?
Yeah, I used to have an Aries modular, a big Aries system. I had this, I had a bunch of other stuff. And I was seeing what digital could do, and I was also authoring my own things in the Cherry Audio platform. But the decision to sell, I went kicking and screaming over to the dark side, the digital side, in exclusively.
Yeah.
And in that process, I made a list, and I put analog in this column and digital in this column, and I was going to say, what are the advantages, the pros and cons of each? And the list for analog was about like that, and the advantages for digital was about like that. It literally went off the end of the paper. And so I just said, well, this is a no-brainer for me.
What did analog win on? Even if it's that big, what's the top thing that it wins on?
Familiarity. It wasn't the sound. It was familiarity, immediacy, maybe, the panels, maybe the fun factor. I really don't remember. There wasn't a lot.
Really? It wasn't it's just kind of like an obscure thing, like coolness? Yeah,
something like that. Something like that. But I really don't remember what was there. But on the...
Value.
Yeah, that's why they got sold. But on the digital side was repeatability, the ability to save presets, the ability to have as much of anything as you wanted, the superior capabilities, things that you could do in digital that you could never do in analog. It just went on and on like that.
And sound quality, you said.
Sound quality too, but mostly expanded palette. Because I've heard every sound that can come out of a Mini Moog. There's never going to be another one. And so I think a lot a lot of synths out there that can sound just like it anyways, certainly in a mix.
Yeah.
So no reason. And I never owned one, actually. I never owned a Mini.
You didn't?
For some reason, no.
Well, you had a biggie.
Yeah.
And you think that like the likes of Bob Moog and Alan R. Perlman and Tom Oberheim and Dave Smith, you know, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but the great synthesizer designers, all of them would be embracing digital like you? 'Cause you're a great designer. I mean, just so this is a great designer here, and a great he built analog systems, a lot of ones and famous ones which we've mentioned, and now is building pretty much the best plug-in emulations.
Yeah, for a number of years I was building, I was designing for a company called Syndustries, my good friend Cynthia Webster, modules, Eurorack modules and Moog modules, MOTM modules, we had a whole line. Came out with something called the Zeroscillator, which was the first commercially successful through zero FM thing. It was on the cover of Electronic Music and Musician magazine, won the Editor's Choice Award and everything. And you can now get the digital version as a module. So
so you would be.
So I had a lot of experience building, designing analog.
So you think they'd be right there with you?
I think that if Bob Moog were designing something new and he wasn't trying to leverage the company legacy, he would not be soldering transistors into circuit boards. I don't think so. Because he was a futurist. He was, how can he bring the best possible experience to the musician, and what's next? What's the cutting edge of the technology? And with analog, you can only do so much. Otherwise, you would be, every Eurorack module would be this big with a box of circuit boards in it to try to accomplish.
Well, I would say for me, synthesizers in general, like I don't think a Mini Moog was designed to be the ultimate expressive synthesizer, or is it? And I don't think it is in 2024. By any means. So using that as the benchmark for me would be just like off.
Well,
because it's a vintage synthesizer.
I just threw that up at the same.
Right, I understand that. But I'm saying, like, I don't think anybody's really putting enough attention into it to build like what could be the Stradivarius version, and if anyone doesn't know, a Stradivarius is like the finest violin that we really try to recreate now. It was built in the 1600s by the Cremona violin makers.
I'll completely agree with you about those instruments. People say, well, a software synthesizer, that's not a real instrument, and they'll point to an analog synthesizer. That's a real instrument. No, neither of these is real instruments. The Stradivarius and the Steinway, those are the real instruments. These are analogs. These are imitations of,
but it couldn't it certainly be like a synthesizer? It's not. Are you saying that it could never be a real instrument? Because it's a synthesizer?
You make music with it, it's a real instrument. They're all real instruments in that sense. But, what that comment is about, separating the analog and digital world into real and not real instruments, I don't think is a valid argument.
And it's separate from the quality of the sound. But I do think the experience of the performer matters in terms of what the listener is getting.
Yes.
Because the better players, you don't want them fighting the instrument to get their music out.
Right.
And I don't think we've gotten there yet. I don't see it like, the best that I've ever seen is like polyphonic aftertouch. It's like, okay, well, that's great. Well, what else can we do? And it's still keyboards, and there's been a lot of experimentation with other types of, note entry devices. And
right. So you're talking about just synthesizers in general, not just analog versus digital, because they both have that problem.
Well, I'm kind of with you. I don't really care about distinguishing between analog and digital, like there's these two things that have to be at odds with each other. Because I record in digital and I listen in digital. I mean, like, who listens to everything analog?
Right.
I get stuff on my computer or wherever. So it's all one thing to me, but I just don't, I think it's a missing link to making electronic music more expressive and heightening the experience for the performer, the composer, and the listener, because they're linked together in the best form of it. They're one. It isn't just like, well, we don't care about what your experience is because the listener doesn't care. The listener doesn't know what they care about. They listen to the music, and they either feel it or they don't feel it. And the same thing with the player. Like when you're playing, like they feel if you wrote a good part for them, and they feel like they can get it out. Or if they're fighting the instrument, or the instrument has intonation problems. Because, this Moog has intonation problems.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
as great as it sounds. So I have to fight that. I find like I'm always fighting something. And that's natural because as a musician, you're striving to push the envelope, right? We're always trying to make better music and do something a little bit the same but different. You know, we're not like inventing music all over again.
Right. Well, the thing is, like with a violin or say a piano, everything is right here under your fingers, right? And a synthesizer's got gazillion parameters, and how are you going to get a handle on performing with all of that? So that's a whole new challenge that is still ongoing. We have MPE now, and all these alternate controllers and things. So things are moving forward.
They're moving forward. But for me, like, give me one good filter and one good knob. I don't need 5, because I can only think like one at a time, So I get what you're saying. Like when you're composing, you want more filters, you want more of this. But like a composer that's like, I need 8 French horns. It's like, well, I could write that song in 4 French horns. And probably, and so could John Williams. More isn't always better music. It's just going to be thicker, and more of that kind of thing. And that's what that is. So I don't want to go off on it, but it's like, to me, it's part of what's giving us better instruments, better listener experience, and it's not always like analog versus digital, because I think we need them both. Like, 'cause isn't a mouse analog?
Not anymore.
When we put your hand on it.
Well, but it's not analog. It's putting out digital pulses.
Yeah, it's putting out digital pulses, but you're not like it's not D to D. It goes from your brain to muscles.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm splitting hairs, but and for a good reason, so that we don't split hairs, because we're going to find that it's all to me, it's all like one thing. It's in the end sound, because in the end, what do you care about in the end? Which part of it? The music that's written?
Oh, absolutely, the music.
Performer, or the user experience?
A good musician, a good composer can impress you on a comb and tissue paper, where somebody with no talent could have all the gear in the world and, do nothing with it. So it's all about it. A friend of mine used to have this joke, this comes with the time-saving talent button, and
right.
That's the bottom line is what you do with it.
Well, it's a really compelling argument, and I do agree with you. I think, I don't know if it's surprising to you, because I'm known to be like analog guy, but the splitting into camps to me is kind of ridiculous, and I think it misses the point. And we're all embracing digital, whether we like it or not, because you're not even going to be able to make a phone call or do anything.
So I've got a question for you. You've done a lot on your beloved 2600, which I sold mine. If somebody one day took out all the circuit boards and replaced it with a CPU and attached A to D converters to all the pots and wrote a 2600 simulator, and you were told 2 weeks later that had happened, would that do anything inside you? You had the same experience, you had the same knobs, but all of a sudden this was now a digital synthesizer behind the scenes.
Yeah, and then I would be able to rely on it. I mean, I would believe like digital would give me reliability, repeatability, memory. It would give me like better signal to noise. I mean, if it gave me all of that with it, how would it make me feel? You want to know?
Yeah, I mean, your analog was gone. That's what I'm asking.
I wouldn't be, because you just told me that
you couldn't tell the difference.
It's more analog than digital.
Well, what I was asking is, if you couldn't tell the difference, would you have a religious objection?
No.
It's almost okay.
Silliness.
Well, people do. People do. They definitely do. They won't even look at something that's digital, because they think it could never be good enough, never sound warm, or what other adjectives. But we've proven, that that's just not the case, because in the plugins that I've done, what we try to do is there's always the blind test. Somebody turns their back. I'm playing this is A, this is B, this is A, this is B, or they'll play one note here, one note there, and alternate. And when you can't tell the difference, ship it. That's our bottom line.
I'm experiencing people that prefer they prefer the sound of the original synclavier when compared to the regen, but they're really picking regen, which is the new version of the synclavier that's this big.
Okay.
But they think the vintage digital is better than the new digital. So figure that one out.
If you didn't tell them which one was playing,
We don't.
all of that would fall away.
We don't tell them which one's playing, but then they find out.
Oh,
and then
it's 50-50, right? They'll either pick the right one or the wrong one at a flip of a coin, right?
yeah, I think it's pretty
So
hard.
knowing which one is playing in advance is a huge bias. And you go, oh, this is the plugin. Ew, I hate it. This is the original. Oh, I love it.
It misses the point. I mean, because I came from acoustic instruments, and it was like moving to electronic instruments was kind of that step where people, just like you're saying, they're having a problem with digital electronic versus analog electronic. Well, I think people had a lot bigger problem with going from acoustic instruments to anything electronic, and I had to suffer through that. And I was that person that was saying, no, there can be music had here. You know, and it's going to evolve, and it's the next step, and we don't stop. Like, we can't be on the steam engine forever. You know, we had an industrial revolution. People stopped farming, and now you tell those same people, like, grab a hoe,
Right.
and they're not going to do it anymore.
I think the age we're in now with analog and digital and the plugins, I mean, we have the sin of gluttony, you know, beyond the stars. There's so much choice. It's too much.
Well, I do think so.
Yeah.
Because people like composers, I don't know, like teachers, composition teachers, and that sort of thing. We were always trying to narrow down our choices so we can write a piece of music. You know, so it would make sense, because like you have too many options. It's like too many things for the listener to get confused by. You know, you need to, and you're liberated by narrowing the field down. So that's something that everybody has to do kind of on their own. So as long as self-discipline rules, I think we'll all be, you know, in good shape musically, because it's gluttonous.
And related to that, here's another question for you. We may agree or disagree on this.
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you think that a synthesizer is defined by its limitations?
I think I am.
Well, every person is, but I mean, you can only do so much on a 2600. You can only do so much on a Mini, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, though.
You think it's a good thing? Okay.
Oh, sure. Well, what would be the converse of that?
The converse is whatever I think of, I can create it. It can do anything for me. That's where I'm trying to get.
I don't have that experience with anything.
No. But I mean, that's the goal, is to create a machine where, gee, I need the sound of a car door crashing and glass tinkling on the ground.
Oh.
Can you make that on your 2600? No. You'd have to turn to a sample for that. But yes, you can synthesize that sound.
So you think in digital, in that realm, you're going to be...
you're going to absolutely be able to do all of that.
To pursue that. But that doesn't necessarily make it, you know... I don't know really how to answer that until I see what it is, you know?
Right.
But I don't see that necessarily as better. And I also don't see a reason to get rid of your violins.
Oh, no. Okay.
You know, just like I wouldn't get rid of my ARP 2600, even if there was one that did it that way, because sometimes the quirkiness of it, the unpredictability of it, because certainly with analog, you could maybe fairly say there's a little bit more unpredictability than there is with digital. You have to make it unpredictable, digital.
True.
So I kind of find, this is again me, sometimes like the mistakes that happen in life, if I'm aware, I can tap into them, like these little quirky things, and that's some of the best stuff I come up with. And so something will happen in that world of unpredictability, even with this Moog, like it just grinds and distorts, and you can overdrive a mixer just by turning it, and there's a difference between this and this, like a little bit. And so I don't get that yet in digital.
You do in my 900 series.
Well, why don't you just briefly say what that is?
Oh, what?
Well, Mark is the designer of Cherry Audio.
No, I'm an outside, what am I? I'm a
third-party developer.
There you go. Third-party developer or author.
I'm fixing my own.
Those are the words.
Mark is a third-party developer for Cherry Audio, and he makes some of the best digital versions of existing instruments, and hopefully he's going to be making some brand new instruments that blow us away and that aren't defined by their limitations.
Well, no, there's always going to be a limitation.
We're getting there.
The limitation is the power of your CPU. You can't go beyond that.
So the human imagination is pretty much still
safe.
Wow. Well, I find it super interesting. It's a great paper. Can we make it available for people to read?
It's on the Cherry Audio website.
Okay.
If you go there and just in their news
Titled "Why Modern Digital Synthesis is More Analog Than Analog," and you put it out in May 12th, 2019. I highly recommend it. I find it to be very informative for all of you, and it's going to be an ongoing argument, I think, kind of for nothing. And I love acoustic instruments, traditional synthesizers, vintage synthesizers, and I love the stuff Mark's coming up with at Cherry Audio. This is not a sponsored post or anything. Mark is my new friend, and he sold me the Moog 3C. So I'm just like, gives me chills thinking about this thing. That it's here, and we're looking forward to new music on it. And just wanted you to hear his thoughts on analog and digital, and look for his new creations. And Mark was also I could say safely, like the creator of Syndromes. And also
that's another whole story.
Yes, and the other whole story is about a type of speech synthesis, right? That he developed with Apple way back when. So you'll hear about more of that. Thank you for this discussion.
Thank you. A lot of fun.